If we then look at Italy and then we'll look at Basilicata, how does that play out? Okay, as I warned at the beginning, you know, being a bank, there are lots of numbers, but I think it's useful to look at the picture and the fact that, you know, it's almost a rainbow of colors in different types of projects. Energy is there, but there are lots of other types, and I think to the theme of sustainability, what is important is to see the spread of projects that are required, not just single projects, particularly at a regional level. At a national level, maybe a bit harder. I was going to talk about it in the project process, but every project that's approved, the national government has to give its okay to. It's not just the bank, and actually the European Commission also. So there is some element of oversight to which projects are approved. It's clear that energy is an important element, and though the bank's lending will be reducing a bit over the next few years, the portion of energy overall is likely to grow. The targets of the 2020 EU strategy are very important, and you'd have seen on the previous slide, though renewables make up 34%, a large percent of the lending. In Italy's case, and I think Dr. Manna said it, renewables are only 8%, so there's still quite a way to go and quite a lot of lending to be done in that sector. In terms of Basilicata, what has happened over the past 20 years? Again, broadly, and I've put the energy projects in particular to the right, but energy has been a key part of the lending which has gone into Basilicata via the investors. You'll see that there's Enel, Eni, Snam, Enterprise, the predecessor of Shell, and so on. And again, this shows energy not just as the upstream production, it's also the networks that are required to bring energy to the market. The single largest element, single largest loan was in industry in 1993, and I believe that was for the Fiat Melfi project. Last year, in 2010, I don't think we saw specific lending into Basilicata. Some of these projects may not be specifically, you may not have seen specifically in Basilicata because they are networks of which a certain portion may pass through Basilicata. So the promoter may have a certain portion of their system, the electricity line or the gas line that passes through, and we try and allocate that portion to Basilicata. But the point again is a number of the themes under which the IB lends are relevant to the sustainable development of Basilicata, not just via energy, though energy may be the driver. It's about thinking what other themes may be required to make it more sustainable, whether it's through urban, water, communications. You saw the other themes under which projects could be eligible. How does the bank go about selecting and then financing a project? I think the first thing to note, it's not like a normal commercial bank in which just the financial viability is of importance. A key parameter of importance to the EIB is the economic viability, how the social, environmental, and benefits versus alternatives, how are those more positive than the alternative? The first stage typically is from the investor, the promoter, approaching the bank to discuss a project. The bank then, if the project passes the broad eligibilities that I showed earlier on, the objectives in terms of cohesion, secure energy, and so on, and it's actually wonderful because some projects could meet more than one of those criteria. If it's in the convergence region, if there's some environmental benefit, and it's secure energy, that gives it an even higher status, if you like. So that's something to bear in mind. But unlike other banks, we look at how the environmental, social aspects of any project are being managed, mitigated, and how they add to the project's economic viability. Around that point, the European Commission has to give an opinion. The Italian government will be asked for its approval as well before the negotiation and final signature of the contract. What sort of timeline are we talking about here? Because again, typically when projects come, the investors want things to go very quickly. I think it would be fair to say that the fastest a project which may not have so much passion and interest can go. So let's say an ideal processing scenario is at least about 4 to 5 months, because ultimately the board of directors of the EIB have to approve each project, and they only meet 10 times a year, and one has to time project submissions for that. However, and this typically occurs more outside the EU, but within the EU with more complex projects, it can take some years, in fact, because we need to be convinced about the right mitigations being used environmentally and socially, and it's not in anyone's interest to rush something through if there are still large question marks over a project.
Okay.
Yes, okay. In terms of the actual safeguards, ultimately the EIB, like all EU member states, is subject to the EU directives on environmental and social performance. These need to be shown to be applied, mitigated, and particularly that the right consultation has been done in an open and transparent manner, that people have been heard, and that the bank is convinced that this has been done properly. In particular with civil society, I think the key and fundamental point is that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. And without that, we will find it difficult to push a project through, unless we are convinced that civil society, in its broadest sense, has had this opportunity. And though, in general, our conversation is with the investor, it is key for us, if concerns are raised, that we make the time, listen to those concerns, because again, the last thing we wish for is to enter into a project where we feel that concerns which are legitimate have not been taken into account. One of the issues and systems we have ourselves is for people to raise concerns if they feel the EIB itself hasn't fulfilled its role in properly appraising the project. And we do receive a number of concerns, requests regarding that, typically on transparency and availability of information. And that is one of the key areas where I think the observatory will help very much in this region, and I think that's one of the key aspects of putting the observatory into place, that information is available. What lessons, therefore, do we have from hydrocarbon, particularly upstream hydrocarbon projects? Not straightforward. And this theme of preparation, a lot of early preparation and very heavy, so that before really launching into it, that people are comfortable. Not just the investor, but the community, people who may be affected. engagement, communication, and transparency. Again, broadly as a bank, we feel that there are very few, if any, things outside limited commercial areas which are secret, in fact, at a certain point in a project. And that proactively needs to be communicated to society. And that's something which one can't avoid, one shouldn't avoid, and that has to be made available. The other point, linking back, as I referred to the sort of rainbow charts, demonstrable economic and social benefits to the local community. And that may not simply be through a single project. It may have to be more than one project. And again, from the bank point of view, the bank is always happy to hear and talk to see what other areas the bank may be able to provide finance for. It is also key, not just at the early stage, but throughout. It's from exploration, appraisal, development, production, all the way to abandonment. The efforts, communication to show that real and perceived risk, because people's perception becomes reality, and those have to be managed, are being managed throughout the whole life cycle. It's not, though the beginning is very important, things happen, and right to the abandonment, efforts have to be made. So in terms of concluding, yes, hydrocarbon production within the EU, in principle, could be financed by the bank. It's in the energy security objective. However, the bank will have to be convinced about the environmental, social, and broad regional positive impacts and mitigations that are being taken into account, understand that these could take quite some effort, and that I think one of the learnings, and this I think was indicated yesterday, what else can be done? Because the hydrocarbon project by itself doesn't create necessarily that much employment, but there are expectations and perceptions. What else can be done from an early stage to build that in a way which, again, I'm speaking on behalf of the bank may be able to help. And therefore, my closing theme really is, as you think forward, the IB is more than happy to be contacted, and not just on the energy side, but on the broader themes for real sustainability in an integrated manner.